All right, second take. Take two. Shannon B. Douglas, cross Canada trip, talking to people about what's going on in the world, what's going on in Canada, what people are thinking and feeling. We're in the middle stage of the pandemic, phase 2. The first phase of the pandemic, and by the way, that's second of 3 major phases, as outlined or mapped out by Nicholas Christakis, a professor at Yale University, who has researched extensively the nature of contagion. Now, contagion of ideas spreads exactly the same way that contagion of virus does. Culture is contagious. And he has studied sort of the rapidly changing culture, the demands on culture because of pandemic through history. And in the middle stage of a pandemic, there are some specific symptoms that we start to see as a society that can turn quite dangerous if we're not careful. So in the first phase of the pandemic, we were renegotiating boundaries, personal space boundaries, covering our faces, social distancing, going through a process of locking down, unknown risks. So in the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know how deadly this disease was, how it was spreading, how our hospital systems were going to be able to cope with surges and potentially massive surges and loss of life. We're talking in the first weeks, everyone became paranoid. I don't know about you, but I would go out for groceries once a week and I would wear a mask the whole time and get in the door and strip off my clothes and put them in a green garbage bag and run to the shower and scrub myself down, and like nobody knew. Was it hands? There was actually a voice that was fairly consistent and competent, that of Dr. John Campbell, who now has millions of followers on YouTube and has been a solid source of information about the pandemic through the whole time. And a few weeks ago, he declared the pandemic over. He's based in the UK, and they've taken some different policies than in Canada. But so that first phase was unknown, at least until we got a vaccine and we could start getting people vaccinated and start to figure out what we did know. But in the meantime, we were very, very afraid. And now, and there was people in the beginning who were saying, "Oh, this is just the flu, and why it doesn't exist. If we don't measure, there's going to be no cases." The whole Donald Trump disregard for the impact of COVID, and people like him. And then we move into, so there were laggards along the way who were deniers, whether they were deniers because they didn't really understand or whether they were following different narratives. But now we're in the phase 2 of the pandemic where we're coming out of it. And different from other pandemics in the past, we have incredible communications, far more medical technology and information available. Now we're renegotiating boundaries on the other side. So as we were going in, we were trying to bring along the laggards who were denying that the virus was an issue. And as we're coming out, we're having people who are still very, very concerned about contagion. And they're so concerned that they demand, and they're pushing the government to, even now, impose stricter lockdowns and stricter measures, mask mandates and mandates in school, and we have public shaming. I've heard from teachers and from parents of kids who are the kids are getting shamed in school for not having vaccines. They're getting shamed in school for not wearing masks. They're getting all kinds of social pressure from people who have no business doing this. Shaming somebody for their difference in a classroom environment is abuse. And teachers all over Canada are doing it. And so that's, people all over Canada are doing it. And we're even seeing these tendencies now that are insisting and begging for the government to maintain control and to take even more of our freedoms away. we have to reach a point where we can agree as Canadians that if you want to wear a mask, awesome, that's up to you. And if you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to. And if we have situations that are reasonable, like my chiropractor, for example, is still asking people to wear masks in the clinic because vulnerable people come through, all right, I'll respect that. But we really do have situations where Canadians are insisting that the government take other people's freedoms away under penalties. And that's actually begging for authoritarianism and begging for government to control us and punish us for not agreeing with the government or agreeing with the people who are the laggards on the coming out of the pandemic, the people who are still afraid of catching this or of catching, being a transmitter to vulnerable people, grandparents, etc. And the data doesn't suggest that this is actually a thing. And we lived with the flu forever, and annual disease would come and our vulnerable would pass as a result. People of advanced age with comorbidities, well, human beings pass away like all creatures. And so now, hearing people advocate for masks and mandates to protect 90-year-olds who are in care homes, so that everybody in society has to make this sacrifice in order to basically get the Lysol disinfectant spray out and spray down everything and everybody to protect people of advanced age who will pass in some mode or by some means, regardless of what we do about COVID. No one likes to think that we're, what are reasonable measures, I guess, is the negotiation that we're having right now. We're renegotiating the personal space boundaries. We are now extending and expanding and opening up. And what remain are the Puritans. And those Puritans, this was a ripe and fertile event for woke politics because of the inquisitorial nature of woke politics and the refusal to debate anything. It's an authoritarian ideology. And so their structures are in place for automatic cancellation if you kind of disagree with this extreme version of safety and purity. And the Puritans, the inquisitors, the witch hunters, other people, they other people as the unclean, the unwashed, the less than human, the things that are happening right now with social ostracization and shaming and dividing society by the vaxxed and the unvaxxed needs to go, because if we continue to institute this, we're making enemies of our families and our friends and our colleagues, and they're making enemies of us. It was very difficult for me talking to a friend of almost 40 years and realizing that we're at such an impasse that, I hate this term, he brought it up, we have to agree to disagree. And eventually, those people will relax. But history shows us that the othering process, that the outcomes of pandemic can lead to purges, can lead to people being viciously ripped apart in the town square, can lead to expanded and intensified racism. History shows us that post-pandemic communities and diasporas like the Jews, like the Roma people, who we once knew as gypsies, travelers, any outsiders, very, very easily branded as contagion, as unclean, as dangerous, And communities respond, tribes respond instinctually to these kinds of otherings, and things can become violent, and very intense, as we've already seen with situations like the truckers' rally. So that's a little brief thought for this morning. I'm testing out my new extended arm for the gimbal, which seems to be working well. The challenge is the sun, so we don't know how well this video is going to do. I'll see if I can edit it up on the train. All right, coming up to the SkyTrain station. I'm heading for UBC today. It's a beautiful, crisp morning here in Vancouver, and off I go to explore the city once again.